What's up, everybody? This is Chris, and this is Barn on 11970, and I have a question that I posted on a video. I won't mention whose video it is, but this is something I feel is very important, and if you live in the United States of America Corporation, this is something that's right in front of our faces that no politicians talk about, hardly anybody talks about, except on my channel, and I'm sure a few others, but if you can, and if you care about this stuff, this needs to get out there because it's just something that is right there that anybody can check. And it's the biggest theft of our quote-unquote wealth throughout our U.S. history. And no one's talking about it. No news media, no government. I mean, they're about to do the next presidential election, and not one person is talking about this at all. So is it the fact that every politician's stupid? Or is it the fact that they don't want you to know about it? I kind of think it's the second one. So if you guys can share this, get this posted on your social networks, ask this question to people, contact your local governments, ask them this question. If enough people actually start bringing it up, maybe somebody might address it, or maybe they just can't hide it anymore. So let me read the comment that I left here, and hopefully it will get answered. And this is what I write. Why do we allow the Federal Reserve to keep stealing from us? It is not part of the U.S. and is owned by shareholders, which, by the way, are the owners of the banks that we bailed out in 2007, 2008. I find that quite interesting. Our government's U.S. Treasury sells bonds to a foreign bank, the Federal Reserve, which they pay for with basically digital numbers. I mean, does the Fed sell, make, or manufacture anything? So where do they get all of their quote-unquote money from? That foreign bank then gets paid interest on those bonds. So when they give the banks their Federal Reserve notes, aka dollars, we, the people, end up paying back their debts, called taxes, from our labor. That's why you go to work, so you can earn some of these debt notes. JFK wanted to introduce Executive Order 11110. And if you don't know what that is, Google it. It's very important. Which basically would have had our own U.S. Treasury make its own dollars. So we did not have to borrow from a foreign bank known as the Fed. What does that mean? Well, it means no taxes on the people. Any wonder why JFK was murdered? That's one of the reasons. Not the only reason, but one of the reasons. How come no one but me on my channel seems to talk about this? Before the Federal Reserve opened in 1913, workers took home 100% of their earned income, which is absolutely true. The taxes that you get on your income were implemented the time that the Federal Reserve opened in 1913. Go check that out yourself. So before the Federal Reserve opened, you took home all of the money you earned. You didn't give any of it to the government to pay for these debts. That's why the forefathers tried so desperately to keep banks like the Federal Reserve from ever happening. And basically, to end this, it says they are stealing our wealth by calling it taxes and lying to us to us all by saying those taxes pay for bridges, roads, and schools. So you're going to see some of the people that are wanting to try and become president, talking about how they want to raise your taxes and everything. Well, that's all wonderful in their point of view because it makes them richer. Because you have a foreign bank known as the Federal Reserve, which creates nothing. It doesn't sell anything. So I'd love to know how they have this unlimited amount of funds that they can lend trillions of dollars to nations. Where does it come from? No one ever asked that. And most people assume that the Federal Reserve is part of the United States because it has the word federal in it. You know, and I've said this before, and many people have said this, the Federal Reserve is much of a part of the U.S. government as Federal Express. Just because it has the word federal in it does not mean that it is part of the federal government. And they basically steal our money. They buy from our country bonds, which accrue interest, which they accumulate. And instead of paying back the debt themselves, they pass the bill on to us and call it taxes. And then they lie to you saying that, oh, it'll pay for bridges, roads, schools, and all that other stuff. And we believe it. And our politicians always see it that way. Oh, we got to raise your taxes because of the fact that we need to build a better community and rebuild this country. Well, then, if that's the case, why are we getting poorer and poorer, and why are all our jobs being shipped overseas? People need to wake up about this, and until people start sharing this is never going to change. It's the biggest Ponzi scheme in U.S. history, and people seem to be okay with it because, you got to do your duty, you got to pay your taxes. Even though, like I said, before 1913, when you went to work, you took home 100% of the money you made. And they're stealing from you, and we seem okay with it because it's just something that everybody is supposed to do. Well, if the government said everybody's supposed to jump off a cliff, are you going to do it just because it's been done? I mean, people need to start thinking for themselves. So this is a question people need to ask politicians. They need to ask local medias. They need to post this in some of these bigger channels that talk about quote-unquote freedoms, and the gold and silver channels, the big guys that are always trying to sell you the very things that they say you need, which I always found that very hypocritical. That's why I don't really listen to many of the bigger silver channels, the ones that turn around and sell everything that they have. Because if it was as important as they say, why would they not hold on to it themselves? And even though I didn't talk for silver for a little while because I needed a break and I was, getting into different levels of thinking, I still have all the gold and silver that I had when I first started making this channel. I haven't sold any of it because I believe in what I say. And it would be very hypocritical for me to say, oh, you got to get gold and silver because it's great for you. Here's some that I have. I'm going to sell it to you. Well, how special could it be? I mean, if all of a sudden every supermarket closed and you had no access to food, I don't care how much food you have stored, do you think you're going to start selling all that food and give it away? No. So I just have a problem with the fact that most people just don't want to care about this. And it's something that's one of the reasons, like I said, why JFK got assassinated. It's not the only reason, but he wanted our own U.S. Treasury to make our own money, which means we wouldn't have to be getting interest accumulated on anything that we borrowed. Doesn't that make sense? Doesn't that seem like something that we should have? And that's one of the reasons why, if you look at your U.S. dimes, nickels, quarters, pennies, half dollars, silver dollars, they don't have the word Federal Reserve Note. It says U.S. Mint because it was made by our own government. So if they could make the coins, why can't they make the paper dollars? So they either are incompetent, which is not good, or they choose to do this so they could make themselves wealthy but steal from the people. Because what do they care about the people? They always tell you how much they want to help you and want to love you, but yet they'll send you and your children to war to go die for their wealth. They'll let all the businesses, all the mom and pop stores disappear and get shipped overseas. They'll let cities go bankrupt. Are they really caring about you? Or do they just say that when they need your votes so they could stay in their power, so they can continue to keep stealing from you with immunity? I mean, turn the other cheek's one thing, but being gullible about it is just a whole nother story. So this is a question everybody needs to ask people. Go on the Alex Jones websites, go on the Peter Schiff websites, go on all the bigger ones, go to the MSNBCs and the CBSs, go to the president's webpage, ask this question, copy and paste it if you have to, and I'll leave this entire question in the comment section, in the description below. So if you want to copy and paste it and post it on everybody's social networks that are in power, let's see how long it takes before maybe 2, 3, 4, 500 people post the same thing before they can't ignore it anymore. But until we start screaming this out, people are just going to continue to be stealing from you. Are you okay with that? I mean, how many people, if they've ever had their house robbed, and I've had that experience, how many people say, oh, well, I hope they enjoy it. Come back anytime. No, you're very upset about that. So if you ever went into your home, and I hope it never happens, and you find all your possessions are gone, you'd be pretty sad, you'd be very mad. So why are we okay with the fact that our government is in cahoots with a foreign bank to steal your part of your wealth? Just because they call it taxes. It's a nice name for we're going to steal your hard-earned labor. Because Most people work for their labor. And the ones who are on welfare, we that are not on welfare, have to work even harder to help give them a free ride. No, I understand there are some people that need it because they have no choice, but there are plenty of people that are milking the system. Believe me, I know that because, you may or may not know, I used to have a tenant at one time that lived upstairs who was handicapped. He had a stroke and couldn't go out and get food. He couldn't do anything. So I was taking care of him, and any time that he needed to go down to the welfare department for any kind of problems, I went for him. And I would have to wait on the lines, and you should see how many people are there with their nice fancy shoes, their nice fancy jackets, talking on their nice expensive cell phones, talking about how they need a handout because they can't find the job. Really? People keep taking advantage of the system thinking that it's going to last forever. When you blow into a balloon, if it's a very large balloon, it will take a long time for it to inflate. And you'll never know when that balloon will pop. But if you continue to pump air into that balloon, I don't care how big it is, eventually it will not be able to sustain anymore and it will explode. It's the same thing with the system. For some reason, politicians have gotten people to be convinced that this can last forever, that they can keep borrowing more and more money, quote unquote money. It's really fiat currency because it's not backed by anything but debt and oil. That we could keep doing this forever. If you think that, you are sadly disillusioned. And one day you are going to wake up to find all of the quote-unquote money you have, even if you have millions of U.S. Federal Reserve notes, or actually just Federal Reserve notes, because it has nothing to do with the U.S., you're going to find that those millions of Federal Reserve notes are about as valuable as toilet paper. It will happen someday. It may not happen tomorrow. It may not happen next year. But it's definitely not going to be 20,000 years from now. It's coming. And if you're not prepared, I hate to say it, if you're not prepared by now with all the things that are going on, if you can't see the writing on the wall right now, I'm sorry. You're either part of the problem or you're just not somebody that wants to believe anything can be bad. Like things throughout history just haven't happened out of the blue. I mean, just a simple storm. Look what happened. I've said this repeatedly. Look at what happened with Hurricane Sandy, where people had up to a week's notice to prepare for that, and they weren't prepared. It doesn't always have to be a government shutdown or a stock market crash. It could be just simple things like electricity going out for a week, and even your banks no longer have the ability to give out money, because how do you dispense cash from an ATM or through a computer if you have no electricity? So that's all I want to say about this. If you guys don't want to share it, that's up to you. I'm trying to get this information out there, but without the help from you guys to spread this out, it goes nowhere. And that's why throughout history, people have always said, oh, well, if these things were true, people would talk about them. Well, people do talk about them, but not enough people are listening or helping to continue that. Look about any quote-unquote conspiracy, which, by the way, people so take that word out of context because you listen to too much mainstream media. So you think, oh, conspiracy means evil. If you and your friend decide to go out for pizza, you have now conspired. Because conspiring is when two or more people decide to do something. It doesn't sound that evil when you put it into its actual context. But, you'll never hear that on Fox News or MSNBC. Oh, they're a conspiracy. And since when is that a bad thing? If you can actually learn that some things are actually true. They just want you to be scared of it or get turned off by it so you won't search for the truth. That's how they scam you. And they use your emotions. You feel stupid if somebody calls you a conspiracy theorist. Like everybody's walking around saying they're talking to Jesus in one chair and Satan in the other, and right behind me is an alien, and in front of me is somebody talking to a rock. I mean, come on. If you watch my videos, you see that I talk about things, a lot of things you can verify yourself, especially when I talk about things like this. It's right there for you to see. If there are people out there that want to call this crazy conspiracy talk, well, that's a person trying to hide something and keep you from the truth, because they cannot contest what's really going on. So the biggest scam of the world is right in front of our faces, and no one wants to seem to do about it. They're cheering all these politicians. I have zero interest in seeing who my next slave master is going to be, which I've already said is going to be our lovely Miss Clinton. I already made a video about that a couple of months ago saying that she will be the next president because they're conditioning people. That's why you see so many like comic book heroes turning female, and you see a lot of female empowered movies coming out. They're programming you to accept a woman in power. That's how they do it. I don't have anything against women, but you could see when they have an agenda and that your votes don't really count and they push you towards a certain way, you're being guided, and most people don't even seem to care. You'll cheer them on as long as you get your free money. But when that gets taken away from you and you haven't worked in 2 or 3 years because you'd rather earn a paycheck by sitting on your couch acquiring welfare, and I'm talking to the people who are doing it knowing full well they could get a job and choose not to. Well, when you go 2, 3, 4 years by getting government handouts, and you're used to getting government handouts, and all of a sudden you have to go get a job or your family's going to starve to death, good luck with that. Keep riding the system. You get what you give. You give nothing, you're going to end up with nothing. And that's ultimately comes down to choice. So if this angers a few people, well, I think you'll be a hell of a lot more angry if you find out tomorrow that your check that you get from your government is no longer there and your bank account has been shut down and all of a sudden your fiat currency no longer has value. Guarantee you'll be 1,000 times more angry at that. So if you want to be angry at the person that's the messenger trying to keep that from ever happening to you, well, then your priorities are in the wrong place. So that's all I want to say. If you guys want to share this, then you're going to help spread truth. If you want to get angry at me for personal reasons, well, then good luck with your future. I hope I'm 100% wrong about the things I talk about. If I'm wrong, nobody loses anything. But if I'm right, and you didn't pay attention to it, good luck. Thanks for watching, guys.